When Emma stepped into the sleek glass lobby of Harlow & Co., her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nerves. It was her first day at a company she had dreamed of joining ever since she graduated, and the weight of ambition sat heavily on her shoulders.
She had always been a young professional, fueled by curiosity and determination, someone who loved problem solving, collaborative brainstorming, and finding creative ways to make a difference. Her colleagues wouldn't yet know that behind her calm demeanor was a mind always racing with ideas, a spirit eager to contribute, and a quiet confidence that had carried her through countless challenges in school and internships. The office itself was a microcosm of corporate life. Polished floors reflected fluorescent lights above, cubicles and glass-walled offices stood like islands, each department functioning in its own rhythm. There were unspoken rules, subtle hierarchies, and a culture of competition that Emma could feel from the moment she entered. She noticed how some teams huddled in closed discussions, sharing information only selectively, while others appeared to guard their accomplishments jealously. Even in the open plan areas, alliances and tensions whispered beneath the surface, an invisible network of insider knowledge that she would need to navigate carefully. Among the colleagues she met that morning, three stood out immediately. There was Clara, warm and approachable, always smiling and offering a friendly word of advice. Then there was James, whose sharp gaze and clipped tone suggested both ambition and an impatience with newcomers. Finally, there was Olivia, who maintained a distant, almost indifferent presence, polite but aloof, seemingly uninterested in forming connections. Emma sensed that these three personalities would shape much of her early experience at the company, for better or worse. As she settled at her desk, the hum of computers and low murmur of conversation filling the room, Emma felt a pang of both excitement and apprehension. She knew that the road ahead would not be simple. Ideas might be overlooked, contributions unrecognized, and biases, whether based on age, experience, or simply being new, could emerge in subtle ways.
Yet, she also sensed that these challenges held lessons in resilience, empathy, and strategic thinking. The question lingered in her mind. How would she navigate the invisible currents of office politics, earn respect without compromising her values, and turn potential conflict into harmony?
For Emma, the first day was not just an introduction to a new workplace, it was the beginning of a journey to discover the power of quiet strength in the face of subtle injustice. As the days turned into weeks, Emma began to feel the subtle weight of office dynamics more acutely. She noticed that her ideas during team meetings were often met with polite nods, but rarely taken seriously, while similar suggestions from James, her competitive colleague, were immediately highlighted and praised. Important emails occasionally bypassed her inbox, leaving her scrambling for details she needed to perform effectively. Even when she completed tasks with precision and on time, recognition seemed to gravitate elsewhere, favoring those who already had established reputations within the company. It was not blatant hostility, but the quiet forms of injustice were persistent and piercing in their own way, leaving Emma with a growing sense of invisibility. The prejudices she encountered were equally nuanced. Some older colleagues doubted her capabilities simply because she was young, while a few peers seemed skeptical of her because she lacked extensive corporate experience. Her style of presenting ideas, which she considered creative and proactive, was sometimes dismissed as naive or overly ambitious. The office, it seemed, had its own invisible hierarchy, where age, tenure, and unwritten social codes determined the weight of one's voice. Even the aloofness of Olivia added to Emma's unease, her indifference a constant reminder that approval and cooperation were not guaranteed, no matter how diligent one might be.
James, in particular, became an ongoing source of tension. Every time Emma contributed to a project, he subtly undermined her efforts, whether by questioning the validity of her proposals in front of others, offering contradictory opinions to supervisors, or keeping key information to himself. The competitive edge she wielded was sharp, and Emma quickly realized that simply performing well was not enough to navigate the landscape. She found herself carefully measuring what she shared and when, analyzing interactions to avoid unnecessary friction, while still trying to contribute meaningfully. Despite these pressures, Emma resisted the urge to react impulsively. Inside, she felt hurt and frustrated, her idealism momentarily shaken. Yet she consciously chose to remain composed, observing, listening, and learning the rhythms of her colleagues and the unspoken rules of the office. Each subtle injustice, each dismissive glance, and each withheld opportunity became a test of her patience and resilience. She began to understand that thriving in this environment would require more than technical skill. It demanded emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, and a quiet strength that could withstand undermining and prejudice without losing sight of her goals. The tension simmered, not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a persistent challenge to her resolve, setting the stage for the trials that would ultimately define her path in the company. Emma found herself increasingly absorbed in a quiet, internal battle. Each morning, she arrived at the office with determination, yet by midday, the subtle slights and overlooked contributions weighed heavily on her spirit. She questioned the fairness of it all. Why were her ideas dismissed so easily? Why did others' efforts receive applause while her dedication seemed invisible? At night, as she walked home, she replayed conversations, re-examined meetings, and wondered if she truly belonged in a place where merit seemed secondary to perception.
Her emotions became a turbulent mix of frustration and self-doubt. At times, the urge to confront her colleagues or to storm out and quit flared with intensity, tempting her toward impulsive decisions. Other moments demanded patience, a conscious effort to stay calm despite the gnawing sense of injustice.
Emma experimented with various approaches, speaking up more firmly, hoping clarity would earn respect, retreating into silence, thinking restraint might eventually pay off, and occasionally humbling herself to avoid conflict, seeking harmony even at the cost of personal recognition. Each tactic offered lessons, yet none seemed to provide immediate relief. Through this process, Emma began to uncover a deeper truth. She realized that control over external perceptions was limited, but mastery over her own responses was powerful. Her resilience, composure, and unwavering commitment to her work became tools far more potent than arguments or displays of anger. She understood that patience was not passive, but a deliberate strength, that listening and observing were forms of insight, and that her quiet determination could eventually speak louder than any confrontation. This internal journey, fraught with emotional trials, gradually shaped her perspective. Success was not only about recognition from others, but also about nurturing integrity, maintaining focus, and cultivating a strength that could withstand adversity. By embracing this mindset, Emma felt a subtle shift within herself. The constant tension of office politics no longer threatened to destabilize her. Instead, it became a lens through which she honed her insight and emotional resilience.
She recognized that enduring unfairness without bitterness, facing prejudice without diminishing self-worth, and remaining patient amid challenges were the foundations of a power far more lasting than any accolade. In that quiet, reflective space, Emma began to understand that her greatest ally was her own composed spirit, and that this inner strength would prepare her for the trials and opportunities yet to come.
The office was buzzing with an unusual tension, the kind that made every email, every message, every footstep feel heavier than usual. Emma's department was facing a critical project with an immovable deadline, and the pressure was mounting. Mistakes had already piled up, miscommunication between teams, overlooked details in key reports, and delays that threatened to unravel weeks of meticulous planning. The manager's frustration was palpable. Meetings became tense sessions of finger-pointing rather than problem-solving. Even the colleagues who usually asserted authority seemed helpless, flustered by the mounting chaos. Emma observed quietly, noting the patterns others had missed. Her mind worked like a calm river beneath the surface turbulence, evaluating risks, anticipating pitfalls, and considering solutions that had been dismissed in earlier discussions. She recognized that the department's dysfunction was not due to incompetence alone, but to a lack of coordinated perspective and a failure to see the project as an integrated whole. Where others reacted impulsively or defensively, she began to propose subtle yet practical adjustments.
She suggested restructuring workflows to streamline communication, created a shared timeline highlighting critical dependencies, and identified the root causes of repeated errors that no one had addressed. Her suggestions were met with initial skepticism. Some colleagues, still clinging to old biases and hierarchical assumptions, doubted that a newcomer could steer the team toward success.
Emma felt the familiar pang of frustration, a reminder of all the subtle dismissals she had endured. But this time, instead of reacting with defensiveness, she focused on clarity and calm. She presented her ideas not as criticism, but as solutions aimed at collective success. Slowly, the resistance softened. People began to implement her recommendations, and a visible shift occurred.
Tasks that had stalled were now progressing, and mistakes that had compounded were systematically corrected. By the end of the week, the project had been salvaged. Not only was the deadline met, but the quality exceeded expectations, and the manager's initial doubts were replaced with a newfound respect.
Emma's ability to remain composed, assess the bigger picture, and contribute constructively in the face of pressure had turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of effective leadership and collaboration. In that critical moment, she had shown that true influence came not from forceful assertion or confrontation, but from quiet strength, strategic thinking, and unwavering patience.
Her colleagues, witnessing her calm authority and practical solutions, began to reconsider their assumptions, and the subtle dynamics of the office had begun to shift. Emma had not only saved the project, but had created the first ripple of change in how she was perceived, no longer just a newcomer, but a capable and dependable presence.
As the dust settled from the crisis, the atmosphere in the office began to shift subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Colleagues who'd once dismissed Emma's contributions began to observe her with a new lens. The manager, once skeptical and impatient, now sought her input in critical discussions, acknowledging the clarity and foresight she had brought to the project.
Even those who had subtly undermined her,
Her once thorny coworker, whose every glance had previously been sharp with judgment, now hesitated before questioning her ideas, a silent acknowledgement of her competence. Recognition, however, did not come with fanfare or loud praise. It emerged quietly, in the way people deferred to her judgment, in the way her suggestions were implemented without resistance, in the subtle nods of respect that replaced earlier dismissive gestures. Emma noticed the change, but instead of feeling vindicated or seeking to assert dominance, she chose a path of measured grace. She extended cooperation where others had been competitive, offered guidance to those who had once doubted her, and refrained from holding grudges. Her calm composure became a model for the team, demonstrating that influence did not require confrontation, but could stem from consistent competence and quiet strength. The real flip, the true reversal of perception, came during a high-level review meeting. The project, once on the verge of failure, was now highlighted as an example of resilience and problem-solving. The same colleagues who had overlooked her ideas now praised her ingenuity, acknowledging her role as pivotal to the turnaround. Emma absorbed the recognition without ego, understanding that the journey was less about proving herself to others and more about embodying the qualities she valued: patience, clarity, and collaborative spirit. In that moment, she was no longer the underestimated newcomer. She had become the linchpin of the team, the go-to problem solver, and a bridge between conflicting dynamics. Through her actions, Emma had not only flipped perceptions, but had subtly reshaped the culture around her. Prejudices that had once limited her voice now softened, replaced by an appreciation for her steady, thoughtful approach. Her ability to transform adversity into opportunity became a quiet inspiration, showing that true recognition comes not from confrontation, but from demonstrating value through resilience, insight, and integrity. In the wake of the project, the office felt different, more respectful, more cohesive, and more aware that strength can be quiet, yet profoundly influential. In the weeks following the project's successful turnaround, the office atmosphere shifted in ways that were both subtle and profound.
The walls that had once divided teams now seemed porous, allowing open communication to flow more freely. Emma found herself collaborating with colleagues who had previously been distant or dismissive, and what had once felt like competition gradually transformed into mutual support. Meetings became opportunities for shared problem-solving rather than arenas for posturing or assertion of dominance.
Even those who had once harbored biases now approached her with a newfound respect, not born out of fear or obligation, but from genuine recognition of her abilities and character. Emma's approach to these evolving dynamics was neither forceful nor theatrical. She continued to demonstrate patience, listening actively and offering guidance when appropriate, fostering an environment in which ideas could be exchanged openly without judgment. By modeling cooperation and empathy, she encouraged her teammates to move beyond old prejudices, showing that success could be a collective achievement rather than a zero-sum game. The very colleague who had been the most critical began seeking her insight on complex tasks, and the previously indifferent coworker became an engaged partner, signaling the subtle but real transformation in team culture. Through this period, Emma reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that fairness does not always arrive immediately, and recognition is not always instant. Yet the strength she had cultivated within, the calm persistence, the ability to navigate conflict with integrity, had turned moments of injustice into opportunities for growth.
She understood that influence often comes quietly through consistency and quiet dedication, rather than through confrontation or retaliation. Her journey underscored the power of internal resilience. By maintaining composure, demonstrating competence, and offering collaboration instead of resentment, she had helped shape a healthier, more respectful workplace. Looking forward, Emma sensed that the changes were not merely temporary. The culture of collaboration she had nurtured began to take root, inspiring colleagues to reevaluate their own behaviors and attitudes. Her personal growth resonated beyond individual interactions, contributing to a workplace where empathy and professionalism guided daily decisions. In this way, Emma's quiet strength had not only transformed her own experience, but had also left a lasting imprint on the office, showing that harmony could be built even in spaces that had once seemed defined by conflict. As the days settled into a rhythm of cooperation and shared achievement, Emma often reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She realized that workplace challenges, bias, subtle injustices, and rivalry were not obstacles meant to break her, but opportunities to cultivate patience, resilience, and empathy. Every tension she had endured, every slight she had absorbed, had been a step toward a deeper understanding of herself and those around her.
Emma's quiet strength had transformed not only her own experience, but also the culture of her team, demonstrating that influence is often most profound when it is subtle and consistent rather than loud or forceful. Looking around at colleagues who now approached each other with respect and genuine collaboration, she understood that harmony in the workplace is not given, it is built, nurtured, and reinforced over time.
The lessons she carried were simple yet powerful. Integrity matters more than immediate recognition. Patience outweighs impulsive reactions, and empathy can turn former adversaries into allies. In this space she had helped shape, injustice no longer cast a long shadow because it had been met with quiet, unwavering strength that converted challenges into stepping stones. Emma knew that the impact of such inner fortitude would ripple far beyond individual projects or daily interactions. It would leave a lasting mark on the environment and the people who shared it. Indeed, Emma's journey illustrated a timeless truth for anyone navigating the complexities of professional life. Injustice may shadow our path, but patience, integrity, and quiet strength can turn obstacles into stepping stones. Her story served as both inspiration and a gentle reminder that lasting influence is often the reward of resilience, understanding, and unwavering composure.